What's the worst thing a woman has done on the first date? I don't have any total horror stories, but when I was away at school, like 2 hours away from home, I matched with a girl from my hometown when visiting my parents. We talked for a few days, and she wanted to meet for dinner, but I had already gone back to school, and it was the middle of the week. So I skipped an evening lecture to go see this girl. As a horny 19-year-old, this seemed like a good idea, and drove 2 hours in the dark and snow. I got to the restaurant, and when I went to message her that I was there, I found she had deleted me off everything. I texted her. We didn't text often, but I had her number and got no response. I still have no idea why she did this, but she was well aware I was driving 2 hours to meet her. The last message she sent me was after I told her I was leaving, telling me to drive safe. I'm not sure what changed during the 2 hours I was in the car, but I never heard from her again. Needless to say, my parents got a surprise visit from me that night, and I didn't feel like telling them why. We had previously agreed on a restaurant, time, and to just do separate bills, to which I would offer to pick up hers at the end to be polite. I arrived on time and messaged that I was there. I got a reply stating she was already inside and seated. The server had just brought her another glass of wine and was walking away with an empty wine glass and a shot glass. The first words out of her mouth weren't even hello, they were, "You're paying, right?" I don't have any money. I didn't breathe a word. I just turned around and left. Brought a friend to dinner. Okay, sure, bring a buddy, I suppose. But the friend wanted to sit at the table and not the bar so we could have some privacy. And they both thought I was going to pay for dinner for all of us and drinks. The friend made it clear she was only there to cock block because her friend likes to sleep with guys, and she was there to prevent that. I kind of felt like I was being accused of a sex crime. I just looked them both in the eye, told them, I ain't the one, and left. This was before we even got our drinks too. We had ordered drinks and an appetizer after she picked one of the most expensive restaurants in town. She took a few sips and then asked me about my job. I explained a little bit about it, said it was pretty boring unless you were a software, firmware, network nerd, and asked her about herself. She asks, does it pay well? I kind of agree and then try a second time to change the subject. She says, I'm asking you how much you make because I don't want to waste my time on someone who is broke. I tell her that it's complicated because when you get to a certain level at a company, you become a flight risk, but also a risk to their long-term strategy as you are considered a strategic asset. So they won't overpay you, but your salary is basically, name your price. She says, do you make more than $250,000 a year or not? That's when I knew it was unsalvageable. She was not just tactless but rude as well. Also, she would invariably be the type of person to think they should spend all the money as fast as they could. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, imagine thinking $250,000 a year is a lot of money, paid for the food, tipped stupidly, and left. It was the only date where I felt like I couldn't continue it. A little late, but I have a story. Met a girl on Bumble, and we decided to meet up for drinks at a pub I frequent. I get a pint for each of us, and the conversation is going well. Go to get us a couple more, and we step outside. She then proceeds to start making fun of me for my clothes, an old navy button-up shirt, as they were a little poor for her taste. Then a couple of my friends show up to the pub purely coincidental. I introduce them, and they leave us alone to watch the football game. She proceeds to start slurring her words and poking fun at aspects about me again, but not in a cute way whatsoever. Very malicious. My friend a few tables over cheers at whatever was happening in the game, and she turns around and yells, FFFFF fuck you. Again, we've only had a beer and a half each. She then offers to go get all of us shots at the bar and walks away before we can accept. She then comes back with 4 empty shot glasses, talked to the bartender after, and he said he set them out, turned around to grab the bottle to pour them, and when he turned around, they and her were gone. I make up an excuse to leave and then text my friends to let me know when she's gone so I can circle the block and come back to chat with them about what the fuck just happened. Saw she posted on IG the next morning with completely dyed hair with the caption along the lines of, people won't appreciate the good that you do, or something. Blocked her on everything immediately. Two come to mind. The first being when the girl spent the entire date listing reasons we shouldn't date. We did work in the same store at the time, but this was only one of the reasons given. Then, at the end of the date, I walked her to her bus stop, and she went in for a kiss, which I dodged. Mixed messages, to say the very least. The worst one was probably meeting a girl from Tinder for drinks around the corner from where her mates were out for the night. We had a really good time, and she asked if I wanted to go and hang out with them, which we did. I was getting on great with her friends, and out of nowhere, a guy she knew showed up, looking around awkwardly at the bar. She said she knew he was there for her as he apparently knew her plans for the night, and she said she was going over to ask him politely to leave. It didn't seem to work, however. I was sitting with her friends who felt something was off, and things got more and more awkward the longer she spent talking to him. The way the table was, we could all see what was happening, and everyone was watching. She then came over and said she needed a word. She told me she asked him to leave, but now she's decided to go to a gig with him, but that I should stay out with her friends. Before I could respond, she got her stuff and left. Her friends were frankly stunned and very apologetic about the whole situation. It transpired quite quickly that she had texted him at one point asking what he was up to, and that led to the situation. So she dumped me on her mates and fucked off. I left shortly thereafter, and her friends were very sweet about it. About 2 hours later, I got a slew of missed calls, texts, and voicemails from her in tears apologizing for the little matter of throwing me aside for someone else mid-date in front of her friends and wanted to know if I was still in town and to come and see her. Eventually, I called her back to end the spamming. She tried to make some limp excuses and said a number of her friends had called her and ripped her a new one. I said two things. You're only calling me because you made a shit decision, and that I was no one's second choice. I then hung up, and she tried for a few years to get back in touch or find me on nights out. Needless to say, a bullet massively dodged, if embarrassingly so. Had been talking to this woman for a couple of weeks, and we decided to go out on a date. She lived about 5 to 10 minutes from where I was at and called me right before I pulled into her neighborhood, saying, "I need more time, give me like 30 minutes. Okay, cool. So I just drove around listening to music for about 30 minutes and then went to her house. I knocked on the door, and she answered, saying to give her about 10 minutes. I went back to my truck and sat and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20 minutes, then a car pulls up behind me, and it is her gay friend. He runs into her house with a 6-pack of wine coolers blocking me in her driveway. Finally, after about an hour, her friend comes out and says, she's coming. About 10 minutes later, she comes out drunk off her ass. I still took her out that night, and we ended up dating for a year. Looking back at it, I think I was only sticking around her because of depression issues and loneliness, had gone through a rough divorce 6 months earlier. Needless to say, lesson learned. I tried online dating once. I was basically tired of being lonely and wanted to see if I could find someone who I might end up starting a life with. Went through the app and found a beautiful woman who I matched with. We started talking, and our conversations would last a while, usually an hour or more. Anyhow, fast forward to date night. Keep in mind, by date night, we had been talking for over a week. Some random woman walked up to me and said, "Hi, are you blank?" And I was like, "Yeah, who are you?" It was my date, who used her friend's picture as her profile pic. I was stunned. She, however, was incredibly upset when I looked at her and asked why she had lied. She wasn't ugly by any means, but she wasn't honest from the start. She started crying when I told her that I was sorry, but I don't think we should try to date because she lied, and I couldn't trust her. But that's my worst date. Nothing terrible but still a bad date. An hour before the date, she asked if we could meet 30 minutes early. I changed the reservation, booked it out of work, and got there 5 minutes before the new reservation. 45 minutes later, she arrived. She was more interested in learning how to break into my career field than learning about me. It was like an interview. We ordered appetizers and dinner. After what would be less than a normal amount of time for the appetizers to come out, she pulled a random waiter over to ask where our food was. I answered by pointing to the waiter behind us and saying, "It's right there." She then chewed with her mouth open and somehow made it louder than any other person I've ever encountered. It was like a dog licking peanut butter off of a spoon. She repeated the, "Where's the food?" trick when the meal came. It was less than 5 minutes after the appetizers. Again, I answered before the random waiter she was harassing could. I didn't let it happen with dessert. "Would you like dessert?" "No. Please bring the check." I ended it with, "This has been unique," went home, and blocked her number. 2 years ago on a first date with a girl, she brought her teenage daughter to the date. When I planned it, I thought it would be just the two of us, but an hour before I was supposed to be there, she told me her kid would be with her. It was a good dinner, and she's a good mom who's raising genuinely good kids and stuff. I just felt like it's a red flag because it feels like you're trying to put it in the kid's mind that I'm gonna be around a long time, and I'm over here still trying to get to know her mom. I don't like rushing into long-term commitments. The kid being there felt like pressure being put on me, and I don't know that it was so comfortable for her kid either. I didn't make a fuss about it, though, because if there's no reliable person who can help watch your kids or run them to whatever extracurricular thing they're doing, a single parent has to run their kids everywhere, which means making time to do something just for herself a challenge. I understood that as I got to know her better. I ended up moving away for better paying work though, so it didn't last. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on the best Reddit stories.